Welcome to the Draft Brewery. This is Dr. Chris Baker, DC, and we've got a lot of info to cover today. I want to talk about my set review for Battle for Zendikar, and I want to do a little bonus footage here of some farewells to M15 and Theros block, and see how the format changes are really going to be something that you're going to want to keep in mind when building new decks for the post rotation in the standard. So, first thing to realize here is that I started to write this article before I played a single game with Battle for Zendikar. Got my general thoughts, my ideas, made a top 10 list of cards that I think would affect the format, and then I started playing a lot. I did a bunch of drafts, just got some experience with the format and with the cards once they came out online during the pre-release, and actually played some games, and it really changed my opinion. So I actually have an informed opinion from about a week of playing online with standard Pauper and 3 weeks of playing after the pre-releases in real life with limited. So let's look in this. So first thing to realize before we look at Battle for Zendikar is cards that were pretty relevant that will no longer be seeing play, and I'll kind of go over some of these and why they're relevant. So let's see. Let's start here with M15, Heliod's Pilgrim. No longer do we have a tutor role effect for enchantments, so things like Debilitating Injury and Pacifism are pretty good to search out for control decks and removal. So yeah, we also lost the Font of Return or Mancer combo, so the black-white grindy control deck, not quite there. Pillar of Light, an exiling effect for big creatures like Gurmag Angler, which we're going to find out is pretty important to kill, and heroic creatures, so that's gone. Raise the Alarm, great token enabler along with Triplicate Spirits, so the white token deck losing some ammunition. Divination, this is the first time I think since I can remember in Standard Pauper that Divination will be not in the format. When you look up my profile in pdcmagic.com, it gives you stats on the most common land that you played and the most common single card that you've played. And Divination plus Island is my combo. So getting card advantage in blue decks, basically Treasure Cruise is going to need some different support. Negate is not actually correct. That got reprinted, so I should delete that one. Peel from Reality, pretty cool trick with Mnemonic Wall, but that's gone as well. Black Hat was a great exploit enabler and really bricked some ground attacks. We're going to have to utilize some other creatures to fulfill that role. Fester Gloom's black ways of dealing with sweepers is going to lean more heavily on red cards to sweep tokens. Sign of Blood, lost a little card advantage. Lightning Strike, this is one of the biggest changes in the format. There's no 2-mana guaranteed, lightning bolt effect. You're going to have to get Touch of the Void at 3 mana or Spell Mastery for Fiery Impulse, which can't go to the face, only hits creatures. So that's a big change in terms of the aggressiveness of 2-drops. We'll be able to potentially gain some clout, especially if they have more than 2 toughness to start, because Fiery Impulse and Twin Bolt are the only real options at that low of converted mana costs. I guess Reeve Soul and Bone Splinter, stuff like that could help, but moving on here, Elvish Mystic, there's no 1-drop accelerant. Leaf Gilder is the only other 2-drop accelerant still from Origins, so ramping with Mystic and green fast starts have slowed down. Wayfinder was pretty great. It's a 2-mana 1/1, put 3 cards in the bin, basically like Dark Ritual for delve creatures plus finding a land. It was like mana fixing and Borderland Ranger, type effect. So that's gonna hurt some of the self-mill decks. And Radiant Fountain was kind of a help to all the control decks that were essentially able to play the game starting at 28 life if they saw enough cards in their deck, which made aggressive decks just have to play against one more dimension of their lands, gaining advantage for them. So control decks will have a little bit rougher time, but they'll have maybe better mana because of it. Alright, other cards that are leaving play. God's willing. I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief finally. Thank God it's willing that this thing is out of there, because it is very difficult to deal with that card. So great. Hopeful Eidolon wasn't that bad to deal with. 4 mana. It was easy to interact with. But Last Breath, another exiling effect. It's pretty rough to deal with. Scholar Vathros is great as a finisher in a lot of this white-black Aspery control decks. Wingsteed Rider, another heroic Windrake, pretty great. Benthic Giant, so there's only going to be one hexproof creature left, or maybe two, Conifer Strider and Whirlwind Adept. Benthic Giant was a little above the curve because it was such high toughness. It was a pretty good finisher. Group Tide, I really like more than Whisk Away here, because you can do it at instant speed and they don't have to attack for it to be happening, so you can really dictate when they're going to be skipping their draw step, which is pretty great. So losing that in the blue control build is pretty big. Phoenix and Gary just pretty much destroys Black Devotion as a playable thing. Their time will be missed, rest in peace. They will be greeted in the underworld graciously by many other undead things, I'm sure. Crone Crusader, another heroic enabler that lost some luster because it's mere battle rage and it didn't get +1/+1 counters, and people were prepared by sweeping with tokens, with Scouring Sands, etc. Well, he was really strong at the beginning of the format. Titan Strength, also not rotating. It was reprinted in Origins, so that's still there. Traveler's Amulet was a bit of a pet card for me that a lot of other players started to adopt as just like a 5th Evolving Wilds to help fuel Delve and be color fixing. The rest of the 2 sets didn't have much good stuff. Skyguard from the Heroic deck. Nullify was quite strong at basically counterspelling the creatures, so Essence Scatter, but also even better, hitting Bestow creatures and other auras like Impact Tremors. So that without that 2 mana counterspell, we're going to be looking for things like Disdainful Stroke and Negate to try to pick up the slack, maybe in blue control decks. Retraction Helix leaving is important because now the Zephyr Scribe infinite combo with Silk Spider Net and all that is gone. There's also Midnight Guard, Ornithopter, Retraction Helix, Impact Tremors as another 3-color infinite combo that was not quite as good, I thought. Scouring Sands is being replaced by Boiling Earth, so no big deal. Charging Badger, click the link to see for sure that Honey Badger don't care. Charging Badger, he probably doesn't care either. He probably doesn't care that he rotates. He's probably like, yeah, modern playable. Yeah, extended playable. He don't get legacy playable. Charging Badger, he don't care. More heroic guys in Journey to Nyx and Legoban Trailblazer. Rise of Eagles and Flurry of Horns. These 2 were my bread and butter. The first event that I played, the blue-red Izzet control deck with tokens and treasure cruises. Probably the easiest tournament that I've ever played on here, and I just destroyed everybody with it, and then it became pretty much the format staple because every card was at 2-for-1. You're drawing millions of cards. Had tons of removal. They will be missed for sure. Blue-red will have to find some new win cons. Final Return, really good card advantage and could get it back with Auramancers, so the grindy control deck, black-white, needs some to use Dutiful Return or something else. Maga Spray, it's pretty replaceable by Fiery Impulse, but the Exile effect was quite strong. against all of these creatures with Dai's abilities, and another heroic creature as in center hoplite. So basically there's only two relevant archetypes that are completely leaving the format, and those are heroic, target your own creatures, make them huge, and play a lot of permanents that have black symbols. So those two are finally gone. We've lost a lot of token enablers, but tokens is still a thing and being supported actually even further with Eldrazi Scions, as we'll see. And I guess you could say the Scribe combo deck, that's a deck that is completely wiped out now too, but it wasn't really an archetype. But anyway, so that's things to keep in mind. Now that we've kind of covered all those things that are leaving, let's look into the new format just to realize exactly what Battle for Zendikar grading system that I'm like to use now. Real simple, A through F, just like in grade school. A is a badass card, it's a build around card, things that have huge payoffs. B, playable cards. These are cards that are pretty much could be format staples. They're just good in most decks that are playing that color. C, borderline playables are a little bit niche. Cards that have to either have some synergy for them to be good or only fit against certain strategies. Right? So for example, Negate could be a great card against Treasure Cruise decks, but against like a green aggro deck it doesn't have any targets. So it's a little narrow. Yeah, the D's are the borderline unplayables, which could be good sideboard cards, but again, sometimes these cards are complete blanks. And F is strictly unplayable, which is the majority of the format. So we try not to waste your time with that. Looked up on Reddit, and the Imager had a pretty sweet thing through the Pauper subreddit of every common. So we're just going to go through this real quick, and I'm going to try to analyze the grade here. So Angelic Gift is basically like Stratus Walk, but in white. Would have been great with all the heroic creatures, but without them, it is just giving your creatures who doesn't have evasion the chance to have evasion. Seems pretty strong on like a Valakut Predator in a Boros aggro deck, maybe on a Whirlwind Adept Codifer Strider in some sort of hexproof, Selesnya deck. But this is not a card that is, crazy. It's a C. It works in some decks, but not that much in others. Cliffside Lookout. It says Core Scout Ally is the key term here. You can build an ally deck, a black-white ally deck, utilizing like all the allies in the set. Problem is we're probably gonna wait for the next set to get even more allies, because right now they're just not strong enough. I don't think. Calaster Healer being the one that lets you go off the most, but in a tokens deck, the ability is pretty strong, similar to Selfless Cathar, except this is repeatable. I ultimately think if you're in a tokens deck, this could be maybe a decent sideboard card to bring in one or two of against decks that are going to run things like Boiling Earth, but just a little too unimpressive. So I'd give him a C-. Courier Griffin, as Elfie likes to say, likes to, got to send a message. And all this creature really does is, have an overcosted, undersized body with a marginal life gain effect that isn't really what white is all about. So it's not like a bad card, it just doesn't quite get there in my book. I guess Vulture Saven is a similar comparable card, but I'd rather like lose 2 life, draw 2 cards than do this. So I think it's a D. I think it's just bad. It's not completely unplayable, but pretty bad. Feldar Cub, similar to Keening Apparition and Kami of Ancient Law or something like that, has the ability to wreck enchantments and come into play and lay some beats. Always a great sideboard card against good enchantments. The Pin to the Earth, Tightening Coils, potentially. impact tremors, stuff like that, pacifism. But only good if those are in the format. So again, C, C minus. Fortified Rampart. I actually like this card a lot in only the kind of like a blue-white control deck. 06 is pretty perfect at stopping Gurmag Angler, which is the biggest ground creature that commonly will be faced against. It doesn't stop you from getting swarmed by multiple creatures, but it can help against the landfall creatures as well, since they can usually only be pumped to 4 or 5 power in the early game, and then it absorbs that and a removal spell potentially. So it can really buy some time and really take some resources away from your opponent. I say, again, this card is a C. It's only playable in a defensive white deck, which is not most white decks. I think white is kind of split. A lot of its cards can either be aggressive or defensive. Ghostly Sentinel is 3/3 Flying Vigilance. Vanillas dies too easily, costs too much. 3/3 is the key power toughness in the format, though, for flying. And evasion is quite relevant. Sultai Scavenger and Vulturous Haven are the other 2 flyers. Waving Elemental is kind of there, but it's a lot more expensive. But I just don't see myself playing this card very often. Wouldn't fault anybody for trying, though. I'd give it a D. Gideon's Reproach seems great. The problem is that it doesn't pass the Gurmag Angler test, which, again, format defining card pretty much. So it's great against early aggro decks, but they have to be attacking, and sometimes if the person plays around this card, you're going to be holding up 2 mana for a long time, and they're going to kind of just develop their board. So I think it's a pretty nice card in terms of removal for white, just because it is so cheap and can hit 4 toughness creatures, which there are some good ones, Benthic Infiltrator, Kozilek Sentinel, that are pretty relevant to kill. But I'm not sure if there's not better options out there, but I'll give it a B, B minus. Inspired Charge. I've already got Warflare and Kythian's Tactics, so this card's not unplayable. But if you want more of that effect, you can get that effect. It's like a D plus effect. Okay, Skull Scout. If this card said Ally on it, I'd be more inclined to play it. There's even a 1/1 flying Suntail Hawk that has the warrior creature type on it when warriors was relevant, and some people play that. There might be a deck for it, but I'm just gonna say it's enough. It's just not good. Another ally here that gets through the Scions, which are a big part of the format. Scions are everywhere. The fact that they attack through them is great. The problem is if a Scion's in play, that means other creatures are probably in play with it, and this is probably getting blocked. But if you're on the play, you've got a 2-drop and it hits for 3 power guaranteed without even needing landfall, it actually can support pretty well with like a red-white aggro deck. McKindy Slide Runner plus this guy means you're going to be beating down on turn 3 for 3 damage a lot. So I think it's quite strong in like Boros or maybe the Silencia aggro deck. So give it a C. Lithomancer's Focus, mini giant growth, prevents damage if there's colorless creatures. There's not that many colorless creatures that are Eldrazi, but there are a lot of colorless creatures that are devoid. So this card is going to be pretty sweet technology. It might be a little bit more sideboard, but this is like the God's willing of the format against certain decks. So it's going to, helps against things like Complete Disregard, because it gets it out of range. Touch of the Void, because it wouldn't take any damage because Touch of the Void is devoid of color. So I think in a tricky, aggressive deck, this card can kind of just trade up against removal spells. It's like a good counter spell. It can get in some extra damage and quite playable. I give it, C plus in some white aggressive decks. McKinley Patrol, another ally, just very vanilla stats. Only playable if you're going to go for the all ally deck, which is probably not that good, so it's like a D. Under Great Corn, yeah, and First Strike, I like it sometimes on defense here, but too easy to kill. And 4/5 First Strike on offense is strong, but I don't know about 4 mana in a white aggressive deck. A lot of your creatures, you just want to be playing removal spells or something. By that, you're playing 4 mana is just too expensive. You want that curve lower. So I do not think this card is particularly playable. So you're getting an F. Shadow Glider, EK Windrake, no ally. It's a fine card. Evasion's good, but it's just a D to me. Not exciting. Sheer Drop. This card is a card, especially starting playing limited, I thought was going to be awesome. It's just Assassinate at worst, and it seemed like it could have some upside beyond that, but I found so many times in my white decks, especially in draft, I was beating down, and my opponents were just playing their creatures and never attacking. So it's hard to tap their creatures. So getting the full value on it just didn't happen as often as I was hoping. So you had to look at the standard Pauper format to really see some value in the card. And there's tons of effects that tap creatures down. So in a blue-white deck, I really like it. You have Pressure Point, Crippling Chill. You know, you could play other cards like Send to Sleep and other Frost Breath effects that allow you to kill any creature. And the land, the Skyline, Cascade, or something keeps creatures tapped so that you can top deck into Sheer Drop and have ways to kill their creatures. You get blown out a little bit if they untap their own creature with the card like Refocus, but that is a little hot piece of technology that you're hearing here first. But Sheer Drop's a pretty great card. Has the ability to do a lot. Problem is you have to take a hit from the creatures a lot of the times, though, so it's not premium, but it's just flexible. It's a pretty interesting card, so I like it as like a B- in a control white deck. I like it. So there you have it. Smite the Monstrous. I think it's just a little too narrow. Not too many 4-power creatures in the format. And 4 mana is a lot. You can answer Gurmag Angler in a lot cheaper ways. So I don't think Smite is particularly playable. Get an F. Stonehaven Medic. Not too many creatures get sweet abilities when you gain life. In a white control deck, it's a little small. So I don't think this card's particularly playable right now. That might change if we get more allies that have when you gain life triggers happen. But not seeing it. Tandem Tactics. Aggressive white decks. I do like this trick. It would have been sweet in Heroic by a lot. Incidental life gains, always helpful in races. Potentially saving your guy or both your guys and killing 2 other guys or more other guys is pretty potential based. Just toughness enhancers too can help against red. Removal and 3-power guys get out of range of complete disregard too, right? So not the worst card in a white aggressive deck, so I'd give it a C. C for average. Anticipate, just a reprint. It's an interesting card. People have analyzed my decks. I typically will only play 2 of this card. You can't play it. People were trying. I just remember people saying you should play 4 of this and like 2 divination, and I am firmly in the play 2 anticipate 4 divination camp. I want to actually have card advantage, not card selection. A lot of the times, unless you're playing like a combo deck or something, or if you really want to hold open 2 mana counter spells all the time or something. But anticipate takes your mana and your time, and you don't actually do anything. So you have to have ways in your deck that you can catch up, or just the hunt for specific cards. So I definitely think it's a playable card, but it's like one of the hardest cards to find room for in a deck because you want actual things that do things, which is what you're looking for. So why don't you just play those in the deck to begin with? So it fuels Delve a little bit, and it is decent, but so it's like a C plus. Benthic Infiltrator is, I think, a pillar of the format because it is unblockable, and the format is pretty much defined by having a lot of tokens or a lot of 2-drops in the format that can block or are designed to block because they have dies triggers. So Benthic Infiltrator gets around all that, so being able to ingest is nice in case you care about that for any reason, but it's pretty sick at just blocking, being an X4, and getting in for some damage. Putting the cards like Infectious Bloodlust or Infernal Scarring seemed like a pretty cool combo to give it a faster clock. So I like it. I'll give that a solid B. I think he's just solid playable. Kind of works in both the control and aggro decks of blue. Brilliant Spectrum is a little bit too hard of a payoff card. I personally think if this card was costed at 1 blue and 4, so that you had the potential to be a 5-color deck and draw 5 discard 2, it would be playable, but it only costs 4, so you're limited in your potential, so I give that an F. Cloud Manta, decent size here, but it just dies a little too easily. And with Eldrazi Sky Spawner in the format, it's just not up to stuff. Costs 1 mana too many, doesn't make enough 1/1s. Clutch of Currents is pretty unprecedented card. You got to think about this card like a split card between 6 mana 3/3 haste Mana War, 5 mana 3/3 comes into play, taps Mana War, and 1 mana unsummon, Void Snare or whatever. That kind of triplicate split card just has so much versatility at all stages of the game that it's gonna be insane in control decks and aggro tempo decks. So if you're playing blue, why would you not play this card? They put passive on your guy, you reset it. They power out an early Gurmada Angler, boom, bounce it, make them have to screw their graveyard, re-delve just to cast your guy. Someone tries to play too many enchantments on a creature in the early game, boom, bounce it to set them back. Like turn 1 creature, turn 2 Infectious Bloodlust, boom. Stuff like that. Yeah, so it's not a build around card, it's just an incredibly solid playable, so I give it a B+. Core Helm Guide is a little too expensive of an activated ability, a little too small of stats. I like the ability, giving anything unblockable is sweet, but don't think it'll see too much play. It is an ally though, so be on the lookout for it in the future. Give it a D. The spell's a sweet reprint, but I think a lot of spells like Treasure Cruise and stuff are sorceries, and they're really relevant. So the spell's sideboard only, it's a D. Could be a good sideboard card because of how mana efficient it is, but you don't want to miss the cards like Swarm Surge is another one I played against the other day. You can't. You'd rather just have an extra mana to the card and have negate so you could counter cards like that, because if you don't counter it, you just lose. Eldrazi Sky Spawner. This card is real. If you've seen Sandstep Outcast or Gurper Gear Crafter, you see this card and you just go, okay, let's make the 2/1 actually fly instead of the 1/1. Okay, let's make the 1/1 actually do something like sacrifice for mana. Okay, so you took a good card and then just upgraded both sides of the card. It's unreal. This is the best card in the format. This is why Twin Bolt, it's just you have to play Twin Bolt in red other than just Fiery Impulse, because the 1/1's not completely irrelevant. You just fire Impulse the flyer, they just gain some incremental advantage over you over time. So pretty solid card. Expect tokens to be a thing. Incubator Drone fits along the same lines. If you're playing tokens, you'll play it. But this one's kind of nothing special because 2/3 on the ground for 4 mana is not really doing that much. But it does have some sweet combos with like Nantuko Husk and just like, exploit creatures, Vulture Saving. So be on the lookout for just these whole things. It's pretty average playable C in a synergy deck. Myth Intruder, I found there are not enough processors. Merc Strider, which you might as well just be playing the 2/2 Separatist Void Mage and not have to need processing and ingesting. This creature is just too small. I think it's completely unplayable. In draft, I like it a lot because ingesting in draft is quite strong because there's a lot of uncommons and rares that give you benefits to it. But when it's just lonely little Merc Strider here, who really cares, I guess you got Oracle of Dust, but Merc Strider is completely unplayable in my opinion. Oracle of Dust, it's not completely unplayable, but 3/5 for 5 is kind of big, but again, can't even block your Mug Angler, which you're going to be playing against all the time, so not a huge fan. I'm calling F. Royal Mage's Trick, I actually love this card in draft, because I play it in all my 3-color decks, and I try to converge off of splash lands, and I just routinely blow people out with it. Can see it being a good trick, actually, maybe in a Sultai or Jeskai type deck out of the sideboard against some of my aggressive decks that I play a lot of creatures, you play a lot of creatures, you try to play landfall or pump spells or something after all these blocks get made, and then you just fog them and eat their creatures. Seems pretty good. Little Plague Wind recycling effect, which is why it's actually quite strong. It cycles. So yeah, I like this card. It's a little niche sideboard, I think, but it's like beyond D+. I think it's like C-. Rush of Ice, again, pretty good with Sheer Drop. Tap those creatures down. Don't let them untap, and maybe get a 3/3 out of the deal late game. This one's only good in aggressive decks, so it's not quite the B level. You don't want this in defensive decks, really. So I'm going to go, it's a C. It's pretty good in the right deck. Salvage Drone, again, I don't think ingesting is important, so I'm not high on this card pretty much at all. If it dies and it drew a card, cool. It would be better than, probably not as good as Jeskai Sage. He could get big. But even then, draw this card, not what I'm looking to do. So I don't think this card's playable. I know people will try to play like the blue-black ingest deck. I don't really know why. Maybe for Swarm Surge and stuff, but I don't think it's that good. F. Spell Shrivel Cancel still in the format, but this is similar, easier to cast. Gets some Devoid and stuff in play, or ingesting things, but I don't think it's, again, relevant. So I'll give it a D. Tightening Coils, I think there's better removal for the effect that you're getting here. If your only way to win is flyers, it's basically the same. Stops anglers and other stuff too. So maybe it's playable in mono blue, but not much else, so give it a D. I like, though, that it is a fixed Pin to Earth. This card should be named Pin to Earth. And they should have errated the original Pin to Earth and called that Tightening Coils. That would have been better. Wavewing Elemental. This card's pretty scary, actually. You play it, and then you play a land, 5/6 flying. That's pretty freaking huge, actually. So be wary of this card. Is if it gets cast and you can't remove it, it's going to dominate the air. So come prepared with some removal for something like this, or just kill people before they get to 6 mana. Altus Reap, pretty sweet reprint. Pretty great with all the tokens lying around. Card advantage like Divination is gone, so this card is going to have a chance to see the light of day. I like it. It's like a B minus. Ooh, also of note, works with active treason. Combos sack their guy after taking out active treason, draw some more cards. That's where all the value's at. Bone Splinters, same reason. Play the Husk active treason deck. Seems pretty sweet. Bone Splinters 2. Great answer to Grimrock Angler and Big Flyers. Pretty much a format staple. It's going to be a B all around. Complete Disregard. This card is pretty sweet as well, mainly because it's instant speed and not a lot of the removal is instant speed in the new set. It's a little tricky in your timing. You don't want them to play a pump spell in response to save their guy. But power 3 less is a lot of creatures, so this is going to make some good waves. It's going to be interesting, the tension between this card and Reavesoul, because Reavesoul costs less, but it doesn't exile, and it's also a sorcery. So this card is going to be better in some situations, worse in others. I like that about the format. There's tension. And which card choices you choose will matter based on what you play against. So the better you can predict what's going to happen, what you're playing against, the better each card will be. So give it another B. Format staple. Culling Drone. Pretty vanilla. Don't really care about ingest. So give that D minus. Demon's Grasp costs too much. And it's sorcery. Yeah. No, 5 toughness does kill Angler. So keep that in mind. So maybe a D. Dominator Drone, tons of other colors. The void creatures aren't that aggressive in black or red, other than, landfall creatures, stuff like that. So not quite what I'm looking to play, but it is strong ability. I just don't think ingest matters too much, so give that a D. Dutiful Return, good reprint, good sideboard card against control decks. Sideboard, so give it a D. Guns for the Stalker, too expensive, I believe, so give that an F. Great Birthing, this card's actually pretty good. It stops you from delving early, so when I got that Treasure Cruise in hand and you're making me put cards into exile while ramping yourself, you're making it easier for you to Treasure Cruise. Harder for me, right? So I think that's a playable card, but it seems not really specific against anything, so I'll give it like a D+. Cluster Healer, very important if you're going to play the ally deck, not very important if you don't, so synergy based card that's going to be like a C+ in that deck. It's like an F everywhere else. Cluster Nightwatch, another great ally. 5-mana 4/5 flying is what the card essentially reads. If you can get it to read that, then that's where it'll be good, but I don't think that's what the format is all about, especially when Gurmag Angler just laughs at this card. So probably give that a D. Mindraker, hey, here's another processor that I forgot about, but Hill Giant, Ravenous Rats with some of the times it'll completely miss on turn 4 just doesn't seem good to me, so give that a D. Myers Malice, I think Awakened cards are much better than I originally thought in Standard Pauper. You'll get to 6-7 mana pretty easily. A lot of games. I think land counts. If you're playing Awaken, your land count should go up. People are typically playing between 20 and 23 lands in these decks, which is pretty low. Even the control decks would play 23, maybe 24. But in Awakening decks, I like at least 25. I really want to hit all my land drops, because your lands will turn into creatures, which could potentially die. So I like this card. I'd probably decide it in against other control decks, but even then, it's like a D+. It's pretty good when it's good. Karna Assassin, another ally. Not looking forward to playing this card in the ally deck, but it can trade it with an Angler if you have instant speed life gain, so there's that. But other than that, D. Silent Skimmer, love this card in draft. 2 in the air. Actually, this card's not that bad. It blocks Sultai Scavenger, while at the same time being able to attack into it and deal damage. It's kind of like unblockable. Yeah. Seems more playable now that I think about it, so it's probably like a C+. Sludge Crawler, another card that looked like crap at first, and then you play with it, and it's actually quite strong. Late game, can turn into like a 4/4 or something. And it can get in some early beats early and trade up. In draft, I had to trade my 4/3 flying for it at one point, I remember. So, it can trade up. It's a flexible card, and it ingests. So, if you're going that route, it can help. So, for a one drop, which there aren't very many of, I'll give this guy maybe like a C-. Swarm Surge, again, very linear card. A C+ in the linear black aggro deck, maybe black-red devoid, black-green tokens, something like that. Really strong Trumpet Blast type effect. First strike means you're going to be able to block without losing your creatures, which means your crackbacks the next turn are great. So Swarm Surge is actually a BA badass build around card. I don't know if the support of the format is quite there yet for an aggro deck. I don't think this card is necessary in tokeny decks, but it could be quite strong in those decks, and people should be experimenting with it and playing it. So be on the lookout. It's a badass build around, but it's really only probably like a C+ type card. Voracious Null, not the best since it takes sorcery speed and a lot of mana to make them big, and then you probably just get bounced or removed anyway. So yeah, not quite the kind of value I'm looking for in a card. So I think that's an F. Sojourn Whiptail, again, 4 mana for a card that's too easy to kill with 1 mana removal spells. Probably an F. Boiling Earth, this card is way better than Scouring Sands for all I remember, which that card can be a blank in the late game, but this is 7 mana 4/4, 8 mana 4/4 haste in the late game when your opponent doesn't have anything. Good at killing X1s, but sometimes they just, you play this either after blocks and you can kill a lot of creatures and trade up, or you can play the haste guy and attack with it all, and now your opponents all have creatures all have damage on them, so they know their block's going to be bad, so maybe you get in for extra damage, or they're forced to chump or trade. So pretty much it's like a pillar of the format, just because tokens are so strong in the format. So are X1s with Eldrazi Sky Spawner, and Scouring Sands rotated. It's basically just this and Twin Bolt. So I think Boiling Earth is a solid B. Look out for it. Play it in your sideboards. Goblin Warpaint, not the type of card we're ever trying to play. Give that an F. Just play Infectious Bloodlust if you're going to play red aggro. Kozilek Sentinel, pretty interesting card. I like it in a red defensive deck, just for the 4 toughness. And even in a red aggressive deck, if you're playing some Benthic Infiltrators, Touch of the Voids, you can get a couple extra points of damage off it. Seems pretty good at stopping aggro, plus forming some sort of counterattack against landfall creatures, potentially. So I think it's solid. I think it's like a C+. Lava Step Raider costs too much mana for this Squire to do anything useful, so F. Makindi Slide Runner. This is a great card, mainly because of the trample ability. You're going to get a 3/2 trample attacking on turn 3 a lot of the times. Even if they trade with like a 2/2 or 2/1, you get in for some damage. But a lot of times you're playing cards like Titanic Growth or Might of the Masses on this thing, and you can really beat down. Or you can attack, they block, then play like Gideon's Reproach or any removal spell after they block, and then deal the trample damage and kind of surprise people like that. So card seems great. It's a kind of a build around, right? Because of the landfall ability, you do want a lot of lands and pump spells to utilize the trample. So I'll give it a build around. It's like an A. It's like an A-. Nettle Drone. This card is a good card. Lava Crew is a good card, but it didn't get to be much play. Lava Crew mainly because it was defensive and couldn't attack with Defender. This can attack, but it can't attack through anything because of the 1 toughness. So it's mainly just going to be this unblockable way to deal damage, which seems fine, but doesn't hit creatures. Does get to untap if you play other spells, so that don't have any color. So I can see maybe there's a Devoid deck here. Black, red, red, blue, something like that. So synergy deck, it might be okay. Let me give it like a C minus. Undo Champion, I like this card. It's an ally. Or giving your creatures trample seems pretty cool in like green-red landfall, since your creatures like Falcon Predator or the Snapping Gnarlid, so they might be big, but they just get chumped by 1/1s or not blocked, and this creature kind of demands 4 power, enables Ferocious. So I like it in green-red aggro and other creatures that are going to be big to trample over. So I think it's pretty solid. Give it like a C plus. Outnumbered now. I thought this card was great in limited. Thought it was going to be good in standard Pauper, but I think there's just better cards in it. In order for you to have creatures in play, you know, they need to be surviving removal and not trading in combat, and you know, they need to not have removal in response to casting it, otherwise you could get blown out. So it's not that it's unplayable, but I think there's just a lot better playable options than this card right now. So I'm going to take Fiery Impulse or Twin Bolt over a card like this a lot of the time. So I consider it, you know, kind of like a C minus, D plus right now. Reckless Cohort, it's a 2-drop. It attacks, but Majoring Bully is a 2-drop that attacks and get bigger. So this card is pretty much enough, even though it reads Ally. We need better keywords with Ally for that to matter. Better triggers with allies. Giant Word. Wow, I didn't realize this card's an ally too. This card's actually the real deal, except I don't see a lot of red decks wanting to get to 5 mana. Usually they just want to play Goblin Heel Cutter at the top and just burn people and kill smaller creatures. So don't particularly see this card being playable, but maybe in sort of green-red landfall deck it could be a good top end because it's hard to block. So we'll call it a D. Stone Fury, 5 mana to maybe kill a Gurmag Angler. It's just too expensive. I could see some people playing a couple maybe, but it's so inefficient at killing other things that, yeah. Or if they get their toughness up higher, it's just real bad. So I don't think it's playable. I'm going to give it an F. Sure Strike, I like this combat trick, especially with Makundi Slide Runner. It's like Titan Strength, except for Strike. It means you get to keep your creature, which is pretty good a lot of the time. So, red aggressive decks, I like this card. It's kind of like a C minus in that deck. What do we got next? Touch of the Void. This is our Lightning Strike replacement. No color, so Lithomancer's whatever stops it. But other than that, Center Soul and other protection effects don't stop it. It is sorcery speed, but it can go to the face, so really interesting card. I like the synergy with some decks, though, the Kozilek Sentinel and whatnot. So I think it's pretty solid. I think it's a B, just like a solid playable for the format since we have no Lightning Strike anymore. Malekith Invoker. I want this card to be great. I want to Lightning Bolt someone every single turn. I've tried it, and it's really hard to do. Getting to 8 mana and having this thing survive and play and having it be relevant on turn 3 is really tough. So I think it's a playable card, but you can try to build around it, but it's a little too fragile. So I will give it a C. Valakut Predator. This card is great with Evolving Wilds, like every landfall creature, but 3 mana is costed right, attacking for 4/4 a lot of the time. Makes me inclined to take the damage if I can't trade with it in the beginning of the game, because I feel like eventually they'll stop drawing lands, and then we'll just have a 2/2 that we can easily deal with. But it seems like they never stop drawing lands. Rule number one, kids, they always have lands. So prepare to take a lot of damage from this card. I think it's pretty good. It's a little overcosted. You could play it on turn 3 and just dies to a lot of removal spells. So doesn't protect itself well, but I like it in an aggressive deck, so I give it like a C+. Vestige, Vemercool. I think this card's great in draft. Just the right power and toughness. Trample's a great ability. Probably gets not that much play though, just because of how vanilla it is, but I think it's playable. It's like C-. Instant speed, land destruction, volcanic upheaval. Really need to... No, you can't be aggressive enough, and you can't have enough awakened spells in your opponent's deck for this to be playable. No. Blister Pod, pretty good in some sort of green-black, Altar's Reap deck. It's good one-drop. Chumps does a lot, but it only gives you a 1/1. I'd rather just kind of like take 2 damage from people and maybe eventually play some blockers. So yeah, it's a synergy card. Not that powerful though. I'd give it it's like a C-. Brood Hunter Worm, 2 vanilla, dies to a lot of things. Don't think people will play it. Maybe it's decent in a green aggro deck, but that seems boring to me. I will pass on unplayable. Call Science, 2 tokens for 3 mana. It's just like Master's Call, except not instant speed. You can sack them for mana, which people can do, but I think the 1/1s are more valuable as 1/1s than mana Lotus Petals a lot of the time, so... What we got next? Earthen Arms. Again, I think Awakened cards are a lot stronger than we thought, and giving like a Wakani Slide Runner to 4/3 Trample could be big. It's hard to find slots for cards like this though, but it's not completely unplayable. Benthic Infiltrator also likes getting tokens on it too. See, don't know. I like to see someone try to play this card. I think it's like a D, but I do kind of like it. Alice Watcher. This card seems real sweet. I like token producers. Forces people to play the Boiling Earth type effect. Otherwise, they're going to get hosed when you cast Overrun and stuff on them, like Inspired Charge, etc. Warflare. What's the black one? Swarm. The Void Swarm, all that good stuff. So this card's solid. It's like doesn't do that much on its own. Kind of easy to answer, but I like it. It's like a B-. Giant Mantis, the good old Mantis reprint. It's kind of the right stats if you're in green. I would probably sideboard it against like 3/3 flyers and 2/3 flyers, stuff like that. But without being able to kill flyers, there's better options like Airy Bowmasters, so probably no one's going to play it. Unplayable. As for Druid, if you're going for more than 2 colors, I can see this as a ramp target, but it dies really easily. So it's not completely unplayable. It does enable maybe a 5-color deck, but it's difficult to pull off. So I'll give it a D. Natural Connection, again, 3 mana is too much mana for rampant growth. So I don't think it's quite playable. F. Unreef Invoker doesn't target other creatures, only himself. Good late game mana sink if you're playing all in mono green aggro, maybe. I can see the card doing something, but most decks probably not, so give it a D. Plummet, reprint, good sideboard card against some things, but there's Aerial Volley, and not a lot of the flyers have more than 3 toughness, so Aerial Volley is the same card for 1 less mana, 3 for 3. Except sometimes you can get multiple creatures worth of value out of it, so this is not quite as good, so sideboard check, D, D-. Claiming Vines, aka Creeping Mold, not sure why. I guess they couldn't rename it Creeping Mold because of the downshift in rarity. But I don't think there's that many artifacts or enchantments and draws you don't count as artifacts and land or whatever, so just an unplayable card. Seek the Wilds doesn't put cards in your graveyard, so it doesn't fuel delve, so it's not what we're looking for in this format currently, unless you want a land or creature selection type card, which I don't. I want to delve, so it's unplayable. Savvy Gnarlid is very strong, mainly because it can attack as a 3/3 or 4/4, depending on your Evolving Wild situation. And it's a 2-drop, so it's an aggressive 2-drop, can deal a lot of damage fast, so I like that card in the Green Red Landfall deck a lot. Pretty solid, playable. I'm gonna give it a B. It's full of growth. I thought this card would be good, but it's not actual card advantage. It's hard to have extra lands in hand. It's good in the landfall deck, but you were gonna play that land the next turn anyway. Like I realize it's not the trick of choice. I'd rather have Titanic Growth a lot of the time, because sometimes if you don't have the land, it's just not gonna get there. So yeah, just think it's an F. I just don't think it's quite playable. Not quite good enough. Taraju Beastmaster, ally, anthems your team, just a little too expensive for the effect you're getting. If you want like an ally theme with some ramp, green, like maybe green white, a lot of tokens, like a tokeny deck that can have some overrun effects, maybe, but I don't think it's good enough. I'm gonna say D. Taraju Stalwart, 3 mana 2/3 is quite bad. 3 mana 3/4 is quite strong, so the variance is real. Depending on your color situation, you really need the third color to make this card strong, I think. If you can guarantee be a 3-color deck, I don't know what deck you're playing, but it's strong in a 3-color deck, so I'd give it like a C in that respect. It triggers allies too, so maybe you just gotta wait for better allies. The Bailout doesn't have trample. If the green land, the spell land, gave like a creature +1/+1 and trample, this could be like a 7/7 trample attacking. Then I would like it, but that Fertile Thicket or whatever just searches for lands, kind of dumb. Whereas the red and white ones are combat oriented, so I think that one was kind of missing. Giving trample would have been sweet. So I think it's too expensive. I actually think it's an F. Unnatural Aggression, again, too expensive for removal, very conditional. The exiling doesn't matter. It's actually really bad in draft compared to what you would think a pit fight type card would be. It's just not what the format needs right now. So just play Epic Confrontation or Savage Punch. Yep. This card's an F. Drowsy Devastator. Here's some unique cards that we haven't seen in Standard Pauper before. The old Ulamog's Crusher variant. 8/9 trample for 8. Now 8 mana is a bit too much for my taste. It's a little too rich for my blood here. But if it does land in play, it can't be answered, which it can be kind of easily. Bone Splinters, Clutch Occurrence, and counter spells, Disdainful Stroke, stuff like that. If it doesn't get answered, it can hit for a lot, but it doesn't help you win the race or anything, so I'm not super impressed by this card. I don't think it'll be played very often by very many decks. Even I just don't think ramp decks will be that great either. Maybe there is some sort of control Nissa's Pilgrimage deck out there that wants to play like green ramp and some early removal spells. I don't know, but I think the Devastator's kind of low on my totem pole here. I'd give it like a C-. I'd like to see someone try it though. People have to try Eldrazi Devastator, etc. Kozilek's Channeler, same. I think 5 mana 4/4 is pretty good in the format for size, except Gurmag Angler exists. And if you're tapping it for mana, then you're not getting your body. So it's just not. I wanted this card to be great, but I don't think it is. So again, another like C- might fit in some sort of ramp deck. Rune Processor, on the other hand, is a card that lets you catch up in the race by gaining the 5 life. You just have to have a few consistent ways to process creatures or ingest creatures. So things like Grey Birthing, Birthing Infiltrator, or if they just delve, if they play delve cards, it'll work too. And 7 mana is much easier than 8, and 7/8 stops Gurmag Angler. So I can see there's potential for this card. Probably not too many decks, but if you are ramping, this card is something that you're going to want to try to include. So I like it a lot. Because other than Eldrazi Devastator, he's usually going to be the biggest creature in play. You can also, if they play pacifism on it, you can bounce it and replay it and get more 5 life value. So it's a little bit of a headache and work to get your value, but I think it could have potential if you are trying to ramp. I don't know if the format's going to allow that, but all the Scions do trade in for mana, so if you're playing against Boiling Sands with your token deck, you want to sack the tokens anyway, get a big creature out of the deal. Seems good. Forces your opponents to have different types of removal for big creatures and sweepers for tokens, which I like, diversifying my threats, both in aggro, control, mid-range, all the strategies. So I'm going to give him a B minus. Scour from Existence. Again, pretty good at getting rid of anything, albeit at the cost of you have to be playing some sort of ramp deck. I really don't see this card making a big impact. This is like a commander card for mono green decks that don't have removal. So yeah, I'm going to give that an F. Hedron Blade gets Death Touch. It's only a marginal effect. It's just really bad. I'd rather play Veteran Sidearm, and even that card's super bad, so F. Wild's reprint, it's just an A+ all-around card. It goes in every deck. It fuels Delve, it mana fixes. You just need to play that card. It's kind of an unspoken thing. It just goes into every deck. Yeah. Fertile Thicket is a card that I don't actually like that much, both in my limited playing experience in draft, because if you're having the need for 3 colors, you're probably playing a lot of non-basics, and it doesn't 5 into Evolving Wilds or any of the dual lands. So putting on top a library is just not what you want to do, and putting other cards on bottom doesn't help with Delve. So I'm not too keen on playing this card at all. So I'd say F for now. Look at the pretty art land. I like this card with Makundi Slide Runner, red-green landfall, red aggro, mono red especially, because their lands getting a spell effect could be the difference between being able to block and trade and be able to block and not trade, and now they're way ahead. So I think Loaming Spires is quite strong in a red aggro deck. So again, I'll give that it's like an auto include in a red aggro deck. So it's give it a C+, B minus. Mortuary Mire, I think this card's good. The kill your Gurmag Angler, you can get your Gurmag Angler back. It's pretty cool, but denying a draw step to do that is a little rough. I've been using it to get back cards like Elvish Visionary after that dies, because you at least get your draw step back for the turn, and so you're only down 2 mana and nothing else, and it's like whatever your Elvish Visionary traded with is gone. So this card is tough to evaluate. I really don't like that it comes into play tapped as a drawback. It'll often mess up your curve when you top deck it. But it does provide some value, so I think it is playable. I think the lands that act as spells in aggro decks are better, and this one's more for control mid-range, so I think this one's only a C. Pretty lands. Sandstone Bridge, again, quite strong in a white aggro deck, maybe. I don't even think a white control deck would really want it, but maybe they could play it. Vigilance, yeah, pretty good offense and defense. Probably just a C. Now this one, Skyline Cascade, I like a lot in my blue-white control deck because I'm playing all these pressure points, sheer drop, crippling chill type effects, right? Maybe the 1-mana Crow and Jailer that taps creatures. So once you tap it, then you play this land. Now you stay tapped. Now you have the ability, to just get some value in time, tempo. help you win the race. Bunch of pretty swamps, and yeah, we're done. So those are all the comments. So I'm going to go through my color ranking. So the colors that I think will influence the format the most are blue and red, and then the least are green, black, and white. I think blue and red are going to influence it a lot. The presence of Boiling Earth is huge. The presence of Sky Spawner and Clutch of Currents is huge. Green does have some token makers and some landfall creatures. Red has some landfall creatures and other aggressive cards and removal. Black has some good removal, and white has some generic cards that are no good. So looking at my top 10, let's see what we got. I think Rune Processor makes the top 10. It probably won't see that much play if I had to guess, but I want to try to make the card work, because when it works, I think it'll be quite strong. You just need to have a repeatable process effect, and then it'll be the biggest thing in play. So I think it works alongside other big threats like Gurmag Angler, because you need to tax the removal, right, on the Bone Splinter, flesh to dust type effect, and then this is the last thing standing, and it just kind of takes over the game. So I like that. Boiling Earth, obviously, staple. In its presence means you can't just play like all X1s, because this card will absolutely wreck you. And it has the late game bonus of being a sub-mana 4/4, which is 4/4 is just huge, and the games go late in this format. So having a sideboard card like this, potentially main deckable, be a creature at the late game, is just way beyond what Scouring Sands and Fester Gloom used to be. So actually a strong card. Bone Splinters, nice Avacyn Restored. Reprint, haven't seen it since then, but there's so many creatures that have value when they die, or like Elvish Visionary, Sultai Emissary, Jeskai Sage, Palace Familiar, Act of Treason, and so many big creatures, Gurmag Angler, Hooting Mandrills, Big Flyers, Sultai Scavenger, Rune Processors, if you're not playing against Nentuko Husk, really hard to kill with red removal. You gotta either bounce it or play Bone Splinters or something. And it's just so efficient. It costs 1 mana. Just build your deck around it. It's so much better than playing a lot of the 5 mana removal spells like Unholy Hunger and Flesh to Dust to kill things. 7, Snapping Gnarlid. I was also thinking about putting Valakut Predator at this slot, since I think they're very similar cards. This one gets the nod because it's on curve a little bit better. Valakut Predator might have some awkward times where you don't draw that many land afterwards. But Snapping Gnarlid is going to enable some green aggressive decks with landfall and pump spells, and it's going to be beaten down pretty good. 5, Complete Disregard. Just nice to have this middle of the road instant speed removal spell that can take care of a lot of creatures, but not all creatures. Can kill 3/4s, 3/5s as well. If you have the ability to make a creature's power less. I guess Tightening Coils is the only thing I can think of. It'd be cool if there was like Silvergill Dowser and then play Complete Disregard on the creature. That would be real sick. But we can hope for that in future sets. Makindi Slide Runner. Just prepare for this card. Have your removal ready. And it hits hard. It trades up. Trades damage. It gets pumped very well. It wears equipment very well. It wears enchantments like Infectious Bloodlust very well. So he's like public enemy number 1 here for aggressive decks. Or in my control decks that I'm building, I'm keeping him in mind. Touch of the Void again. Lightning Strike reprint needs to have the 3 damage effect. It's actually kind of competing for Bathe in Dragonfire, if you think about it, though. If you're going to be dealing 3, and there's a lot of X4s in the format, might want to just start playing Bathe in Dragonfire, unless you're a super aggressive deck, and then you want to be able to go to the face. But if you're playing Bathe the Dragonfire, then you're going to be not killing X5, so you need another ways to kill Gangler. So now it's just great. The removal in the format is so varied that it actually matters what you play. The control decks can't just play the same removal spells because different decks present different types of threats with different toughness levels. So yeah, I still think the card's pretty great. 2, Clutch Occurrence. Again, unprecedented effect. You got to think about this as like a triplicate split card of Void Snare, Mana War, Hasty Mana War. It's just really good. Best card in the format, though, I think it's pretty clear. Goes to Eldrazi Skyspawner. In all of our drafts so far, card just presents great threats. Sometimes helps ramp you. Sometimes just 2/1 flyer early just is annoying to deal with. It's going to get in for some damages. It's going to make those Palace Familiars a lot better to be able to stop this guy. So just keep that in mind. These are the cards to look out for and the cards to start building around when you are exploring the new format. Stay tuned. I'm definitely working on an idea to I want to analyze the metagame. I have no idea what people are going to play, but maybe analyze the metagame a little bit after week 1 and then kind of come up with an article that's like a pillars of the format. I already have some good ideas of what I think like the absolute pillars of the format are, and how to combat them, and maybe use some unconventional cards that haven't been seeing a lot of play lately. So yeah, the format seems super fun in the games I've played so far, and very different than before. It's great not having Devotion or Heroic around once it's been around for 2 full years. The new standard rotation affects standard Pauper, obviously. So that is great because formats are going to rotate faster. It means they're going to be stale less, and there's going to be less dominance of, something is good. It won't be around for forever. So cool. So that's my, podcast style video log set review here for Battle for Zendikar. For more information, follow me on Twitter, Dr. Chris Baker DC. You can read more info about the Standard Pauper Players Clan blog, about SPDC and MPDC. We just got a new sponsor. I'd like to thank Card Hoarder at Card Hoarder on Twitter, cardhoarder.com. They have bots on Magic Online. It's very similar to MTGO Traders. I can buy every common at basically 1 cent. And so a day into the pre-release, I had every single common in the whole format that I thought was playable for $1.20 or something, Such a cheap, easy way to play Magic Online. Definitely use Card Hoarder if you play Standard Pauper Deck Challenge or Monday Pauper Deck Challenge and just win some prizes. Free to enter tournaments, right? 15 bot credits and tickets in the prize pool. 7 for first, 4 for second, 2 for top 4. I mean, you top 4 one event, you can basically buy as many commons as you want from the new set. Basically build the entire format. That's why I really like Standard Pauper. I have built 19 decks already in this format, basically updating decks from the previous Theros block format and then trying to come up with a few new ones. And I don't even have time to play, the format that much. So it's really fun to just try some new ideas and see what people bring to tournaments. And there's very few people out there like me, Gwynedd, the Magic Gathering strat guys. There's very few people out there, Jason Moore, doing Standard Pauper reviews and analysis. It's just you think Pauper is a niche format, this is even more niche. So it's just a great way to get, I think, new players into the game because you actually feel like you're playing limited. None of the cards are super busted. You can look for synergy decks. You can look for powerful decks. Tons of different open strategies. Would really recommend getting into the Standard Pauper format. So I'll be hosting events with Roberto Remedio R Remedio 1 is my co-host on Sundays at 11:30 a.m. PST. So yeah, if you got any comments or any thoughts on cards that I either overrated or underrated, be sure to let me know. And I didn't get around to doing my Magic Origins top 10 review. But yeah, hold on. Let me see. A little bonus. I forgot to do that, but I'll just look up the article right now and just go through it real quick. Let's see how it did so far. Now the format hasn't rotated yet, so these cards might get better. So my top 10, my honorable mention was Separatist Void Mage. I think it's good in a blue aggressive tempo deck, which I did make a mono blue aggressive tempo deck, so this card has potential. It hasn't seen much play yet so far, but can kill tokens, resets your own guys. Yeah, it's decent. And Tuco Husk, who I'm glad I put this card as 10 because I think this card is quite strong in the new format. Be on the lookout for him. So I think I hit there. Undead Servant, it's been a little lackluster so far. Mainly because Delve is so strong, it's hard to let this guy come into play with value. But I have built a green-black kind of Golgari, graveyard kind of grindy as heck deck, and he's in it. And if you ever play this guy and start making 1, 2, 3 tokens with it, you're gonna win the game. Like, it's very, very powerful. It just takes so much setup cost. So it is like a number 9 for core set. Empyrean Tactician has not panned out, but mainly because everybody just quit playing tokens because people were prepared for it. I think this card's playable, but probably a bit of a miss. But I do have a red-white tokens deck right now that I am playing, using it, so we'll see how good that is. Body Construct right now, again, somewhat of a miss. There's just not enough red haste creatures. Was it Mardu Scout, Valley Dasher? I mean, it could get there. And I am playing it in my mono red aggro deck. You just gotta play Goblin Heel Cutter. You gotta play every haste creature in the format to really get some use out of them. And maybe that deck is just not good enough. Maybe it is. We'll see post rotation. I think it has potential though. Kargath Forward Order. I think this card's a bit of a miss, mainly because the Ration Cleric is just a little more life and a little bit better of a blocker. But maybe mono red is just not the format defining archetype. It's been these Treasure Cruise, Gray Merchant decks that have been good, but I do like gaining life. And mono black aggro did win MPDC World, so I expect this card to maybe get on people's radar a little bit better. The Gear Crafter was a huge hit, probably underrated this guy. I won an event with Rakdos Grind with him. Great sacrifice fodder, just great little 2-for-1 potential. Forley won the Worlds event with the same Rakdos Grind deck. He made a couple of cool tweaks to the deck. Great card. I mean, Eldrazi Sky Spawner is good. This card's great too. Majoring Bully, again, it's quite strong in the mono red aggro deck, but I don't think that deck has been the best. So a bit of a miss, but I still think it's a good card. Fiery Impulse has been fantastic, and now that Magma Spray and Lightning Strike are gone, this card is going to skyrocket in value. Probably should have been the number 1 card from this set, actually, by a lot. Celestial Flare, bit of miss. There's not that many Hexproof creatures that are worth playing against, and there's tokens everywhere. Can kill things like Angler, but killing tokens is tough, so... And white control decks like blue-white just hasn't existed, so Celestial Flare, bit of a miss. And last but not least, Reeve Soul. I think this card will get better now that the format has rotated and there's not that much great removal at 2-drop slots, especially in black. It's competing with Complete Disregard now, but I do like this card against a lot of creatures in the format, so I think it will get an uptick. So stay tuned for some updates to your evaluations of these cards from Magic Origins. Okay. That is a lot. Complete rundown. I'm kind of thirsty now. Alright, so stay tuned for some more content in the future. Hopefully I'll make some videos with some new decks, and we'll explore the format together with our brews and whatnot. Alright, thanks for watching.